What's up, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to the Silent Giants podcast. I'm your host, Corey Cambridge. Before we get started on this week's interview, I just want to share some things I've been working on. Besides hosting the show, some of you may be aware that I'm a rapper and songwriter. But today, I'd like to share with you a song that I recently wrote for one of my dear friends, Synead, called Lost in the Wild. Synead is a super talented artist based here in New York City, and I'm a big fan of her and her music. The song Lost in the Wild, which you're going to hear in just a little bit, is produced by Richie Quake and my brother Matt FX, who you may know from the second episode of the podcast. Okay, I'm going to shut up for now. Here's a clip of Synead's newest single, Lost in the Wild, produced by Richie Quake and my brother Matt FX.
I'm an animal. Bet you think you're controlling me. Goddamn, you're wrong. I broke out my cage tonight. I'm taking off from you. Now I've hit the ground. Don't try coming round. Don't surrender. I must be a little crazy. I don't know what you've been thinking lately. I just wanna roam until the morning light. I lied for you, thinking about all the things I tried to do. All those nights I cried for you, and now I'm coming back to life. I'm an animal. I'm dangerous. I'm on the prowl, on the prowl. I've escaped from you. I'm in the wild, in the wild, in the wild. Lost in the wild, in the wild, in the wild.
Well, there you have it. Synead's newest single, Lost in the Wild, produced by Richie Quake and Matt FX, and written by your boy, Corey Cambridge. Lost in the Wild is now available on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you listen to your favorite music these days. Now, on to the newest episode of Silent Giants with special guest Mike Parker, the silent giant behind Nike's Air Force One.
So what happened was, the other thing too that happened is at the time, do you remember Big Tigger?
Of course,
Big
yeah,
Tigger,
BT.
the basement.
Yeah, of course.
So got it placed on Big Tigger for the basement. And he started like talking about the Puerto Rican Air Force One. He's like, yo, I got these dope, that. And then after that, it was crazy. So that the shoe dropped, the 3,000 just blew out. It was crazy.
Yeah, check it out. I'm your host, Corey Cambridge. Yeah. Everybody tuning in, you invited. No matter what mood you in, get excited. Everybody love the music, let me tell you how they do it. Whether writer or an agent, let me tell you how they made it. You are now talking to a silent giant. Wanna walk in their shoes, silent giants. Wanna study they moves, silent giants. Wanna know what they do, silent giants. Silent giants, y'all.
Welcome to the Silent Giants podcast, a podcast highlighting the superstars behind your favorite superstars in creative industries. I'm your host, Corey Cambridge. To keep up with the latest on the show, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Silent Giants Podcast. To keep up with my life, music, and more, be sure to follow me as well at Corey Cambridge. Today on the show, we have a very special guest, Michael Parker, the silent giant behind Nike's Air Force One sneaker. As product marketing manager of limited editions at Nike, Michael is responsible for making the Air Force One the highest revenue grossing sneaker of all time. In this interview, Michael shares his background, how he ended up working for Nike, making the Air Force One the #1 selling sneaker of all time, and his move over to Under Armour, where he signed Steph Curry. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to the silent giant, my friend, Mike Parker. Can you hear yourself?
I can hear myself.
How you feel?
I feel good. I only hear it on one side, though.
Yeah, because we in stereo.
Oh, okay. So it goes back and forth? Like,
Yeah, so you hear me on one side, you hear me on the other side.
Oh, gotcha.
No, in the mixing is going to be, it won't be like that in the mixing.
Gotcha. Now that I've figured this out, I'm feeling good.
My man, Mike Parker, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. God is good.
God
I'm
is good.
alive, and I'm here with you, and I appreciate it.
Nah, dude, I appreciate you. You are a nice guy. You're even courteous over email. Some people just hit you with the 2-sentence joints. Be there. Got you.
You know, I've always been cognizant of that with emails, man. Like I like, interaction. Like act like you're a person.
Yeah.
So I try to humanize it a little bit. So that's maybe just an individual thing.
I mean, it's just a nice touch. It lets me know, like, off the bat, oh, it's gonna be amazing. Like, this is stress free via email.
No doubt.
So I mean, the conversation game's got to be tight.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
So far, so good.
Listen, I like to do my thing.
I told you earlier, you're the Ray A. Kroc, the Ray A. Kroc of the sneaker game.
I like that. I've never heard that phrased in that way, but when we discussed it, it makes a lot of sense because, I didn't invent the Air Force One.
Yeah.
However, I've had my hand on it, and I like to think I've made an impact on that shoe.
For sure.
So although I didn't design it, but I think I made it more popular.
Hey, I think I think the Ray A. Kroc analogy is perfect. For those who don't know who Ray A. Kroc is, he's the I guess now founder of McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah.
The man-made founder.
Exactly.
He kind of positioned himself. I guess.
Yeah.
But he took McDonald's and he didn't make the burger. He didn't start the franchise.
Nope.
He just saw the marketing potential behind it and pushed it to the company we know today.
To the next level, exactly.
And then we have Mike Parker.
Yeah, well, that's saying a lot there. I got over $1 billion. I can't say.
There's parallels. There's parallels.
There were a number of pairs of shoes that were sold. I mean, yeah, it was fun. I mean, that was like one of my first jobs at Nike. I mean, I started as an Econ, which is an entry level position at Nike, where you learn everything. And then as my career kind of advanced, I got into sales. Then I did a little basketball apparel product. Actually created the Battlegrounds concept.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
For sure. I've done my research.
Okay, yeah, Battlegrounds. I was,
where does the story start for you? Like, where are you from?
I'm from New York City.
Okay, where about in Brooklyn?
Not Brooklyn. I'm Upper West Side.
Upper West Side.
Upper West Side.
Okay.
I have to say that because most New Yorkers, they'll say, if you're not from New York and people ask you where you're from, I could say, like, I'm from Harlem or whatever, because people know Harlem.
Right.
But if you're a New Yorker, they'd be like, no. You're not from Harlem. Like, you're from the Upper West Side.
So what classifies the Upper West Side technically?
So anything below 100th Street. 100 between like 100th Street and 70, actually maybe 60th and like Broadway.
Okay.
On the West Side, Amsterdam. So anyway.
Has the Upper West always been like bougie?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's a misnomer. Like,
okay.
When I grew up, it wasn't bougie. It was, we had the projects, we had things popping off. But over time now, I mean, Upper West Side, it's very nice.
Are you there now?
No. I live in Brooklyn now.
Oh,
but my mom still lives up in Upper West Side.
Hey, so. I can tell a Brooklyn cat. I can tell. There's something about you where you walk. Where in BK?
I'm in Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy, yo, that's my guy. That's where I'm at.
Oh man, I love BK. I always say I was raised in Manhattan, in New York, but I fell in love with BK.
Yeah,
you know
for
what
sure.
I mean? So it's a special place.
I was raised in VA, but hey, I call BK home.
Call BK home.
And so, how did you? What was your upbringing like as far as school? Were you like a good student? Did you enjoy school or?
You know something? I was a hard worker. That's what I'll say. I always say elementary school was a pivotal moment for me because in my up until 4th grade, I honestly say I struggled in school. I worked hard, but it just didn't come to me.
Yeah. And
I still remember to this day, man, my 5th and 6th grade teacher, because I went to PS75 right there on 96 in Broadway, Mr. Brennan. He was I have to say that this guy changed my life. Because in 5th and 6th grade, his class, I didn't even go to his class because it was kind of named the difficult, class to be in.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, he went and took a principal position at a middle school, and he took me with him. And then when I went, that's when it all kind of came together for me. And so for me also, though, I have an older brother who was also part of this program called the Dome Project.
Okay.
And the Dome Project was basically a program for kind of at-risk youth and giving kids an opportunity to kind of go a place to go study, but also if they really wanted to study, they also had the opportunity to go to prep school.
Okay.
So my brother and a bunch of his friends that grew up got a chance to go to boarding school, And I became aware of that as I got older in junior high school, and I went to the same program. So I went to Lawrence Academy in Groton, Massachusetts, man, as a 13-year-old.
So coming from being in New York City, which obviously, man, it's like unlike any other environment in the world.
Yes.
So coming from living in Manhattan to going to school in Massachusetts, what was that like, that transition?
It was definitely a culture shock, because you're coming from, I mean, like you just said, I mean, New York is so diverse. The neighborhood I grew up in, I grew up around Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Haitians, Jews. I mean, everything, right? So it was nothing that I wasn't exposed to. And then here I get, placed in Groton, Massachusetts, and it's a very homogenous environment. And, economically, a clear difference. Just again, come from the neighborhood I came from, there were people that were wealthy that lived on Riverside, but then there was people that lived in Douglas Projects. Yeah. And so there was always that mix of, and I was kind of in between, middle class, what have you. So, but going to Lawrence, there was no middle class. It was the upper class and super upper class.
Right.
And then that was that. And so that was a little interesting, but I think for me, I've always been myself, and I think sports and basketball in particular, for me, was always kind of like that common denominator, or that thing that allowed me to kind of connect and relate to people.
Now, did you play?
I did. Yeah. I grew up in the city playing ball. I played ball at Riverside Church.
Okay. Nice with it?
Oh, listen, I do my thing, you know what I'm saying? You got to check the resume.
Okay.
But, play with Kenny Anderson.
Oh, wow.
Me and K.A. as young AAU kids. Matter of fact, there's a story with me and K.A., and we talk about it to this day.
What's the story?
Well, when I first met Kenny, I was playing for Central Baptist Church, which is another church, program, and we were playing in this tournament, Stone Gym, which is next door to Riverside Church. So Stone Gym was like the popping tournament. So you had Riverside, Gauchos, all these teams that would play. So Central Baptist, we played against Riverside, and that was, Kenny A. And like, they was always talking about this kid, like, because he was a child prodigy, like, back in the days. But I really didn't know about him, but like, whatever. But as a competitive cat, we get in there. So I was the man on my team, and he was the man on his team. And it was like it was an epic one-on-one battle where, I mean, I can admit, I went for like 42, and he probably had about 48 or 50.
Okay.
But it was
yo, you nice with it.
But we went at it, and he said to me, he was like, yo, when you came, he goes, nobody ever came at me like how you was coming at me. So so I got hyped when you was coming, like, and it was crazy. So we went back and forth. As a matter of fact, after that game, though, the coach from Riverside came up to me, Coach Honeybun, and he was like, man, what you doing next week? I was like, I'm just, he's like, come to the church. We having tryouts. And so, boom, I went, and that's when I, joined the Riverside Church team, and that's what actually gave me exposure to traveling, because that was, during that time, Riverside and the Gauchos, they had money, so we was traveling to the West Coast. We was going to L.A., we was flying to Phoenix, we was doing it. And also had Malik Sealy, rest in peace. Yeah. He was on my team. We had a crew, man. We had my man Garfield Smith went to Maryland, Gordon Winchester, Seton Hall. We had some cats that really did it. Now I ended up going to Cornell. I didn't reach the high level, but we were all Division I cats.
And it's a very fine institution.
Thank you. No, absolutely. I think I made the right choice.
Shame.
I think I made the right choice. The way it ended up. But it's basketball's in the blood, man. And so it is basketball was a tool for me to kind of go to, Lawrence, but also, I was a good student as well. So
did you ever have in your mind that you would be involved in athletics but that would always be a part of your life?
No, not at all, man. I would say growing up as a kid, like, I was fortunate to, I love sneakers, right? That was a thing. And so, but also where I grew up was kind of the crossroads between that I would describe as like hip hop and sports. And what I mean by that is when you went to play basketball at the park I went to go play at, it was called the Goat Park.
Earl Manigault?
Earl Manigault.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was the Goat Park. So that was where, back in the days, they used to get their bump on in the Goat Park. Like that was a spot where cats from uptown or whatever come and play. But that same park was also known as Rocksteady Park.
Okay.
So the Rocksteady crew,
Rocksteady crew, of course.
Boom. So you got these two worlds that are like colliding. So if you were a breaker or whatever, and you wasn't really into basketball, well, you would still go to that park to chill with, Frosty Freeze, Doze, and all them catches doing their thing. But at the same time, you got guys like Mario Ellie, 3-time NBA world champion.
Houston Rockets.
Spurs. Grew up in my building.
Oh, get out.
Grew up in my building.
I didn't know he was a New York cat.
He was a New York cat.
Didn't know that.
Sapase. You know what I'm saying? My man Mario, shout out. Also my man Babito Garcia.
Yeah.
Grew up in the same building.
He's killing it right now. He's on NPR.
He's killing it. Absolutely. That's
Love
family
Babito.
land.
I'm subscribed to the show. Love them.
I love it. And that's fam. So like all of us, so that park was a special park, like in a lot of ways. And so going back to your question, did I know I was going to be in this world? Absolutely not. I mean, when I graduated from Cornell, I actually was, the first job I was doing, I was delivering newspapers. It was tight out here in these streets. It was tight. The economy was, but I was committed to I got a degree, I got to work. Can't be living off of moms, so whatever. Hold your pride. So, but I didn't know what I was going to do, and then I had a couple of other jobs in between where I was a social worker, and then I worked as an investigator for a public defender's service up in Harlem. Okay, doing that stuff, and then the whole time I was still playing ball in the street, street ball with in tournaments. And so I was playing in the league, what's it called? Asphalt Green on the east side. And actually, Babito was on my team. There was a lot of cats that we were still playing. There was another guy on the team who had worked for Nike at that point in time. And I was just kind of like, yo, how do you get a job at Nike?
Yeah, and what time period is this?
This is, I'll tell you, this is like 1994-ish.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
94. I graduated in 93, maybe 95 or whatever.
It's also prime Nike time. Prime Nike.
Oh, Nike's popping. Like, this is where it's at. That's why, when he's telling me he's working for Nike, I'm like, how do you get that job?
Yeah.
So he was just kind of like, hey, man, if you don't have any marketing experience or sales, it's probably kind of difficult. And I was like, wow, that kind of stinks. But then I just kind of stayed on him or whatever. And then finally he had said, and then my other boy, who was a little bit younger than me, but he had been connected to Nike. And I told him what I was doing, and he connected me to the person that was running the Eakin program. So that's where I started, and that gave way to me to kind of becoming an Eakin, because I then, although I was working my regular job, I started moonlighting and shadowing this other dude in his job as a Nike employee.
So Nike had an office here in New York.
Yeah.
But they've always been in Oregon.
Yes, always in Oregon.
But what offices? What were the day-to-day duties of the offices here in New York?
It was mainly marketing, and then they had a sales office out in Long Island for accounts to come out and see, the product and all that stuff.
And what was the what's the early story? Explain what the Eakin program is.
So the Eakin program is Nike spelled backwards, if you haven't figured that out. And it really is the entry level, and the whole thing is you learn, the company inside out, forward and back. That's why they call it, Eakin kind of deal. And so it's a position where I worked in New York and covering the 5 boroughs in northern New Jersey, and I was a technical rep. So I would just educate people on why Nike running shoes were better than the competitors, and talk about the airbag and the benefits of air. I was an ambassador where hey, Jason Kidd is wearing this new shoe, so you guys should know who to talk about. And so it was kind of that. So working in kind of with the sales team, when the product team would come in from Oregon, they want to travel and kind of hit the hot spots in New York. Well, I would be their tour guide, we'd take them to the 155th Street. You got, these Caucasians coming in from Oregon who are not very comfortable going up to Harlem. And so,
there was no Clinton then.
There was no Clinton then. There's no Clinton. But, they had a pass when they came, with the peoples.
Because did you major in marketing at Cornell?
I didn't actually. My major at Cornell, I was in industrial labor and relations.
Wow.
So I wanted to be a lawyer. That was what I wanted to do. And then after 3 years, I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I had too many credits and I couldn't transfer them without delaying my exit from college. So I just said, let me just finish up my curriculum and then I'll figure it out from there. So yeah, it was kind of like, I won't say luck, but I mean, I guess you network and you kind of gravitate toward the things that you're interested in. And so I would say playing basketball was clearly an interest, and then connecting one of my teammates who was working for the company, and then having the courage and to kind of ask and, find out and not taking no for an answer and figuring out how to navigate. And then that was all she wrote. Once I got into Nike, that kind of paved the way kind of for everything else I've done, since starting at Nike.
Because how did you find out that you were going to be accepted to the Econ program?
So what happened was, again, I was shadowing one of the regional Econs, and he had said, hey, listen, there's a position that opened up. One of the Econs is leaving. I put your name in the hat to interview. So I was, at the time going against, people that were managers at a Foot Locker, working in that sneaker space, and a couple other, and maybe another guy from the Athlete's Foot. I didn't have that kind of training, but I guess my Cornell background or whatever helped. So anyway, I interviewed, and it was I got the phone call. I was at my house with my mother, and it was like the happiest day of my life, because I remember actually rehearsing, because I had to give like a presentation for the interview. And I remember the morning rehearsing in front of my mother so she can hear me, and I was practicing. And so for that to come to fruition, after doing that with her, it was amazing, right? It was like one of those, like being a kid in a candy store, like, what? I just got a job with Nike? Are you kidding me? What? And I'm only 20-something?
And out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years removed from college, I guess. Yeah, that's out the gate.
I mean, out the gate being with professional experience, like this is a company that is like hot too at that time. It's like joining Bad Boy.
Yes.
In like 96.
Yes.
Like scorching.
Fire.
I
had no idea. The thing about it too was like, I didn't even know that you can get a job in a sneaker company. Like what did you, I mean, I wore them all the time, but I never thought about like, well, who makes the color on that shoe? Who's designing it? Where did the materials come from? Like, these are things that I just didn't think about.
Yeah.
And now, obviously being in this industry, it's like, yeah, go figure. Like, there's somebody that does every little thing that you're wearing, and that's somebody's job, and they get paid for it. So that's pretty dope.
What was your first day like?
Gosh, what was my first? Let me see if I can remember. It was... I met a bunch of cool people. They flew us out to Oregon for like an orientation and getting us, because we had these things called Nike Universities.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of like get this training, and there's a method to how we do this thing. So it was a little intimidating because there's a lot of smart people around, and you're like, damn, okay. People are cool, and they're athletes, but they're really smart too. So it was good, but it was more diverse than I thought it would be. So there was a couple of cats that I saw that, all right, women, men, people of color, and I think Nike did a good job from a representation standpoint of hiring a diverse mix of people, and I think they benefited from that, because a lot of the great things that have happened for the company, I think, has come from insights of people having just kind of diverse backgrounds. Of culture. Totally of culture. And so I like to think that I was a part of that. And but no, it was great. It was great. Like, it was fun. I mean, I got to go to the Nike store to pick out my gear, get my footwear. Like
your sneaker game had to be insane.
Bananas.
Like so growing up in the suburbs, there was always the whenever your friends got a job at the mall. That person was supplier for all the crew, right? You had to be that times like 20,000.
Oh my God!
Like, forget the Foot Locker gig.
Oh my God!
I'm the plug.
I was everybody's best friend, man.
Of course.
It was nuts. It was nuts.
I love you, Mike.
I appreciate
If
that.
I have a
man.
son, man. Yo, Mike Parker, Cambridge. That sounds nice, though. Yo. The plug.
Hey, listen. Hey, man. If I'm connected, you connected, man.
Uncle Mike.
All day. All day.
Uncle Mike.
Yeah, and I'm an uncle six
Godfather,
times over.
uncle.
All that.
All that. Best man. You are that. And so, explain, like, what was your first, like, job or assignment with Nike? Like, what was your first big task?
I would say the first big task was my, giving my my training presentation on the benefits of Nike Air. So it was a Foot Locker in northern New Jersey at the Garden State Plaza Mall, and so we had to do these clinics early in the morning before people would come to this to shop. So we had to get the managers and the workers. So I'd get there like 8 in the morning. The store would open like at 10. And it was like my first, my bosses there, and I got my little trinkets to demonstrate, the benefits of air and all that. And I'm just like, okay, I hope I don't sound stupid, but I'm kind of sweating. But I get up there and I'm in front of about 12 associates, and I just kind of just roll into it. Hey, I'm Mike Parker, the Nike guy, and I want to talk to you about the benefits of air today. And here's why you should that, and that kind of broke my cherry from that perspective. And then after that, it was all easy. I mean, different environments. We did these Nike universities with 50 managers or what have you, and then we did the small intimate ones. But that was the biggest kind of thing, because you present a lot. Like, presentations are critical at Nike.
Even with, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're obviously the expert to know, but even with the with Jordan, I think there was a period after the Jordan 2 where there was a period where he was thinking about leaving the company, and they brought in Tinker.
Oh, yeah.
To give a presentation.
Yes.
With the Jordan 3.
Yes.
So I guess maybe even from Nike's always been a big presentation company.
100%.
I remember, I think it was something on Netflix where they talked about that.
I know you're talking about
Designers.
Yeah.
The
That was
Netflix documentary.
And then was on. They had a segment on Tinker.
Yeah, and he was explaining how there was a point there where Michael was going to leave after the 2.
Totally.
They brought in Tinker, and then he gave a big presentation with the shoe, but also the jumpsuit. To match the gear.
Yeah.
So I definitely can understand how.
Totally.
Because it's millions of dollars on stakes.
Absolutely. That's a game changer right there. And clearly, Tinker had an impact on that. And so that's just the nature, man. Like, that's what I was saying. Like, there was a lot of talented people at Nike. So, like, presenters were it was amazing. Like, you could not be a good worker, but if you could present, yo, you were good. You were good. I'm serious. It was like so much value placed on it. But yeah, so it's one of those things. But that I definitely thank Nike for kind of forcing me out there to kind of do those things, because public speaking is not everybody's favorite thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you want to have any success, that's part of the mix. You got to talk to people and be convincing and charismatic or persuasive and whatever it takes. So that's what one of the many things that Nike had done for me.
Now, how did you get involved with the Air Force One sneaker? Because obviously it's a shoe that's been around since 82.
82. There you go.
82. So give me a little backstory for our listeners who may not be aware of the history of the Air Force One sneaker.
Yeah, well, the Air Force One was created and designed by Mr. Bruce Kilgore. So he's the man he's the hamburger. He made the burger. And yeah, it was the first basketball shoe with air. It was encapsulated air. And, if you guys remember the Air Force One poster with all the cats standing, I think it was Bobby Jones. And so all those guys, it was a, shoe that's worn by the NBA. But what happened was, when the Air Force One first came out, it didn't pop off. Like, it actually really didn't sell that well. And it kind of went into, but certain retailers that had it kind of kept it and it became like as known as dead stock. I don't know if that's even exists anymore. But so there was a guy down in Baltimore. What was his name? Rudos. He had like a stack of Air Force Ones that were just there, and so although
he was a collector.
No. He owned a store. I'm sorry, he had a store. It was called Rudos.
Okay.
It was an athletic store, like an Army and Navy store or whatever. But it was Mr. Rudos down in Baltimore, D.C. And it became known that he had the only kind of like stocks of Air Force Ones on the East Coast. So New York gets credit, for the Air Force One as the New York shoe, but depending on who you talk to, because they had the other cat up in the Bronx, Jew Man, that also had some dead stock Air Force Ones. So depending on who you talk to, the time frame, there's a little debate as it relates to did the Air Force Ones get popped off in Baltimore with Mr. Rudos? Because there were cats coming from New York, driving down to Baltimore to get these Air Force Ones.
Yeah.
So that's a real scenario. But Jew Man had some stuff too, so that's kind of it's debatable.
Okay.
In the sneaker history.
Folklore,
exactly. But it just became, and then for whatever reason, it just caught fire and just became this staple shoe that.
Because if I'm not mistaken, the story of Air Force One kind of reminds me of Timberland, where there wasn't any marketing dollars spent. So there were no Air Force One ads. There were no Timberland ads, where there was this like cult following because Timberland was in Massachusetts.
Right.
And it got picked up really big through drug culture. It was the same way Air Force One's a culture sneaker.
Yes.
Timberland became a culture boot.
Absolutely.
So when you're out there selling drugs
in
the cold.
The streets was on it.
Yeah, so they were driving back and forth from New York to Massachusetts to get these Timberland boots.
These Timberlands, absolutely.
And so the story of Air Force One kind of reminds me of that story.
I can see that. Absolutely. No, I mean, there was definitely, drug culture has played a major influence in fashion for many, many years. And, going from the fur coats into the, gator shoes or whatever, like all the hustlers, they set the tone. And it was no different than sneakers. It's like even, like you look at New Balance in Baltimore. Like New Balance is like a huge shoe in Baltimore because of the drug culture. Like,
right.
It's hands down, again, just one of the better shoes in that marketplace. But Air Force One was just that as well.
And where was the turning point with the Air Force One as far as gaining like real popularity? Like what was that point where Nike realized like, yo, I think we got something here with this shoe from '82 that.
Yeah. I gotta say, so before I took on the gig, there was another guy before me, and I think he did a good job of capturing, because that's when the momentum's like when videos were really starting to crack, and so I think that had to be like around, I want to say like 96.
Okay.
94, 96. And then when I took over, it was in the heyday. It was just, you couldn't keep it because like the white and the black Air Force One were like, it was like crack. And it truly was.
No. Honestly, my memory of the Air Force One was like, yo, the first day of school, if you even had creases in your joints.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was a truly almost like a crack epidemic. Yeah. Then I remember MTV Cribs. And I never forget the Fat Joe. The Fat Joe episode where he goes and he licks the bottom of his Air Force One. And there was those type of things that created this
those are
mystique around
moments.
How did you get placed on the assignment for that shoe?
So, I was doing at the time basketball apparel for Nike. So like I said, I finished kind of completing this whole battlegrounds concept or what have you. And what happened, I was looking to diversify, my experience. So at that point in time, I was in Eakin, I'd been a sales rep at Nike, so I was selling stuff at Nike. Now I was on the apparel side, so now I'm touching apparel and making clothing. And then, footwear was always kind of like the end game destination because that's, I love shoes. And so that was, the opportunity was there. So it was kind of like they were looking for somebody who had a, fashion sensibility. I think it helped that I was from New York just because of where, the business that I was running.
From Uptown, by the way.
From Uptown, yeah, Upper West Side,
Uptowns.
Uptowns, yes.
Back in
yes.
Virginia, we called them flavs.
You call them flavs?
Flavs, because they come multiple flavors.
Yes, like, was it like a Baskin Robbins? There you go, the flavs.
Yep, that's where it comes from.
Oh, that's where it comes from?
That's where it comes from.
Okay. Well, there it is.
It's very unique to Virginia.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, flavs.
Okay, well, and Uptowns and flaves.
Yep.
What do they call them in B-more? I forget. But yeah, no. So the opportunity presented itself, and so I was kind of like, yeah, if you look at where the business was happening, well, New York was the epicenter.
Yep.
Then there's D.C., Baltimore, Philly, Boston. Like you have what they call the I-95 corridor, right? So this was my backyard. This is where I'm from, and I get to now work on a product that is from my blood, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it was like a perfect match, and I'd already had good experience, kind of working through the different groups. I had apparel in my background, and so yeah, that was it. They brought me on board, and then started just getting a chance to kind of go in a candy store. Now, the thing about it is that not only did I get to play with the Air Force One, but I got to play with like the Bo Jackson, the Max 95, the original Huarache, Max 90s, Pippins. So I got a chance to touch all those things. Now Air Force One was the workhorse and all that, and so my thing is I could say my claim to fame as it relates to that is the creation of the Puerto Rican Air Force One.
And so there's a point here. I just did a little research on you.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
In your first year, you generated $20 million worth of revenue.
Yes.
So from $30 million to $50 million.
Yeah.
On the Air Force One product.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Like, what goes into what was the strategy behind making that growth happen?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I don't want to say it's really rocket science, but one of the things, I had some good teachers, some older gentlemen at Nike, and one of the things he talked about was kind of demand, right, and allocating product, right, and so that wasn't really a term like you. Usually, as a salesperson, you sell as much as you can and get it while you can, right? So there's really no discipline because you don't know when it's going to happen again, right? So that's typically the sales mentality. So really there was a sales strategy, first of all, in terms of like, we knew that we had a coveted product. We probably knew we could have sold a lot more, but because we created a limited amount, it created more of a frenzy. And what it allowed us to do is to do gradual growth versus kind of exponential growth on something that we knew that was phenomenal. So, but it also took, the insight to kind of understand like, okay, we know that, white Air Force Ones are people waiting for those in the springtime. So we're gonna go dark. We're gonna starve the market, wintertime, but come February 1st, the white one, the flood's gonna come on.
Yep.
And that goes from like February maybe to like September, October, whatever. But so that was like the core, right? So that's your bread and butter. That's just, you don't think about it. And then in between.
Pardon me to interrupt. Before you came on board, was the colorway just black and white?
No. The Air Force One did come in like a white navy, a white red.
Because at what point in the game did they start doing different colorways?
So right around the time when I was in there, that's when we started changing the material on the swoosh. going from a leather swoosh to a jewel swoosh, popping color on the outsole. We were popping color in the collar. We were, changing the actual, going from a leather suede to like a canvas and, leather mix. So that's when we started experimenting and kind of like pushing it. And at the same time, what was going on too was like there was a lot of people doing their own customized Air Force Ones with the whole Louis Vuitton and like the aftermarket stuff that was like really pushing the envelope. So it was forcing me to kind of like, okay, how do we, we're not going to get the Louis Vuitton material, but how do we kind of make what we're doing, sexy in order to kind of compete? But there was a status associated with the Louis Vuitton or the Chanel kind of like, prints or what have you. But yeah, no, that was where we were just having fun with colors, materials, and just not limiting ourselves. We had to look at price in some ways because you had to be cognizant of, again, you're trying to commercialize a product to make sure everybody can have accessibility to it. But you also don't want to ostracize, your audience because you're way too high in price.
Right.
So we just kind of like just had fun, man. Just took things and like we did like a denim Air Force One. I did the Air Force One with Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah.
First one when
He was balling them joints.
Exactly.
My man.
The first ones I did, it was the candy apple red joints that he wore at the All-Star game in D.C.
Get out. That's crazy.
Yes. No, man. Like that was, again, but he's always was wearing them. And then we was like, yo, Rasheed, let's
do this.
Just make it, yeah. And I remember going to his house in Portland. He was playing for the Trailblazers, and we sat around, and he's a simple dude, real. If you look at all the colors, they were real basic. There was nothing, we did a North Carolina color.
Yeah.
We did a black and white patent one to kind of do with the Trailblazers. So he was easy. But like stuff like that is where it became kind of fun to kind of do what I like to say is collaborations, if you will. You know what I mean? Where if you look at what collabs are like today, I guess you can consider Michael Jordan a collab too, but you know what I'm saying?
But they're a little more common today.
They're more common, yeah.
Right, like at that time, no, collaborations weren't really happening with like, in that type of context.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And so for an idea, let's say for instance you have this idea of, let's say the denim Air Force One. Mm-hmm. How does that idea come from your head into actually being made into an actual product? So is there like, are you working with the designer? Does the marketing team go to the designer, or how does that really work?
I'm gonna keep it real, man. There was no, when I was doing it, now it's different. Mm-hmm. They do have designs, because right now it's called, when I was doing it was called limited edition. Mm-hmm. At Nike, it's now called NSW, so Nike Sportswear.
Gotcha.
So it's a huge machine. When I was doing it, literally, it was myself, and I had a developer and a colorist. But I would double as a colorist as well. But we had a trained colorist who would kind of, go look at the trends and have all these different Pantone boards. But at the end of the day, I would be choosing the colors that I thought was most relevant and made sense, because I was looking at what was going on in the apparel world, right? And academics, Rockaware, Fat Farm, all those kind of, So for me, it was like, denim was always an important part of the wardrobe for the consumer, right? So every cat had different types of denims that was out there. So it was like, how do you, and then cats are wearing denim with sneakers. And so it's like, okay, we should probably do like a little version and, add some denim. So at the time, I forget what the denim company was, but there was a particular kind of denim like finish that I was like, yo, it has to be something that's a little bit, that's going to work across multiple denims, right? Because everybody has their own little version. And so what I did to my developer, I was like, yo, got a pair of these denim jeans. It was like, yo, I want to put this, on the swoosh and on the, sock liner, not the something, the collar lining of the shoe. And they was like, okay, well, these jeans are like, they're not part of any materials that we work with any factories on. So we had to kind of go and try and match the jean print with a local vendor that we use with one of the factories to kind of replicate it. But so it's like so that either the material guys would have to knock off, the denim color and all that, and then that's how it really kind of came to life. So it's like taking that and then sending out that sample. The factory kind of comes back with different executions, and we look at different variations. So we had like a stone wash finish, we had a regular denim blue jean finish, and then I just sat down with my developer, and then I take that product though too, and go shop the marketplace, right? So I just don't do it in a vacuum. So we'll do these samples, get these bags, and then hit the streets. So then I'll have and cats back in the days will tell you, I would show up with big, giant duffel bags, and I'll be right there on 125th Street at the Jimmy Jazz or Dr. J's at the time, throwing out shoes and having kids give me feedback on it. And so I would do that. I would come to New York. I would spend time in D.C. I would do it in Baltimore. I'd go to Atlanta. Wow. I'd go to L.A. So I would do it in Chicago. Because to me, I was building a line for the entire country. So I couldn't just be limited. But I knew that a lot of the action was going to be on the East Coast. So I know if I got the East Coast popping, then everything else will fall in line. But that's how I would find out. So I can't just say I just sat there and I had the crystal ball and everything I dropped was popping. I got validation from being in the streets. And I feel like that is something, at least now, I don't really see that happening as much. Product people, talking to consumers, getting feedback. And obviously because it's maybe the digital age and people want things fast. But that was how a lot of the stuff that I did kind of worked and became successful. And it was just talking to the people and as well as looking at, like I said before, what was happening on the apparel side, urban apparel, because Nike didn't really have any cool apparel that cats really wanted to rock in the same way they want to rock, FUBU or like I said, Fat Farm and the Rockaway. And so I would even, the cats that or Echo Unlimited. So I used to connect with my man Coltrane Curtis when he was at Echo.
Yeah.
Yo, Train, what's going on? Yo, Mike, what colors you got? What we doing? We dying. Yeah, let's get it. Same thing with academics. So there was a cultural thing, in terms of understanding what's driving the business, right? The shoes is driving the clothes is driving the shoes. People want to kind of feel this energy and so that's where a lot of the things that I worked on kind of came from.
So you're not all the way Ray A. Kroc. You're also working in some ways of designing and coming up with ideas and creating the
concepts.
Shoes.
Yes.
Concepts.
Yes. I know. Absolutely. And like I said, though, one of the concepts was the Puerto Rican Air Force One.
Tell me about that.
So now that growing up in New York City, the Puerto Rican Day Parade is every June, every year, man. It's a big parade. I don't know if you've experienced it before, but it's amazing. But that was just kind of second nature for me growing up. I had a lot of Boricua friends. My college sweetheart was Puerto Rican. So I was connected to the culture, but it didn't hit me until I was actually obviously working at Nike and just the phenomenon of the Air Force. Everybody's rocking Air Force One. And then, so it was one June, and in the city, everybody's in their car, they're waving the flag. It's this hyper. And I'm like, wow, there's so much pride. On this day, everybody getting hype. And I'm like, and, Boricuas, they like Air Force Ones. They rock it. It's, you go to Spanish Harlem, cats, it's like you said, Fat Joe, he's licking his Air Force One.
Licking the bottom.
So I'm like, yo, there's something here. So I was like, so it was kind of risky at that point in time. I kind of went back and it was unusual to try and put a flag on a shoe like that. Just didn't happen. And so before I did it though, I did go to Chicago. I went to this. There was a retailer out there at the time. It doesn't exist anymore. It's called Tony Sports. So Tony Sports they was hot in Chicago. Like they were the go-to spot. And I forget his name, but one of the retail associates, we were just talking, and he was having, and Chicago has a large Puerto Rican population as well there too. So we were talking about shoe and all that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna do this Puerto Rican Air Force One. He was like, yo, okay, that's kind of dope. And I said, I got this flag thing and da-da-da-da. And then, then he had said, he was like, yo, there's an animal in Puerto Rico that's indigenous to the island. And it's their equivalent of a cricket, but it's called the coqui. And I was like, and it makes a noise, coqui, coqui, coqui. And so anyway, so I took that idea, and I was like, okay, let me put that in the mix. And then boom, took that, went back to Portland, Oregon. So I had the flag and all that stuff, and then just kind of did a sample. And then so I went to the sales guy that handles the territory. I was like, listen, I'm just going to make 3,000 pairs. Let's just see like what happens. And we're going to buy it blind. So like nobody was, because usually Nike's is a future-driven company. So meaning that, they don't build anything unless there's orders against it, right? Okay. So that's what that means. So like unless you're going to, make sure you're going to buy it, we're going to build it. We built this blind. So there was no home for it. So really it was like, we're going to give it to a few sales reps, and then you take it out and let us know what happens. And so what happened was, the other thing, too, that happened is at the time, do you remember Big Tigger?
Of course.
Big Tigger,
BT.
The basement.
Yeah, of course.
So got it placed on Big Tigger for the basement. And he started, like, talking about the Puerto Rican Air Force One. He's like, yo, I got these dope, that. And then after that, it was crazy. So the shoe dropped, the 3,000 just blew out. It was crazy. And we were like, oh, shit, I think we got something here.
Because where did you send the 3,000 shoes to specifically? What markets?
The New York market, New York, Chicago.
So it was a ticket, obviously, was on a national platform.
Yeah.
It was only in New York City.
Pretty much
New York. Available. Pretty
much New York and Chicago. Because Chicago also had, like I said, a large Puerto Rican population, but it was majority New York, no question. There was a guy on 116th Street that got the most pairs. I forget his name, but it flew out. It was off the hook. And then later on, Big Pun had it in his video. I think at that point it might have been the Puerto Rican Air Force. It might have been at number 2 or number 3. I forget, because we kept doing iterations after that. Every year it became an annual thing, and we had a float at the Puerto Rican Day Parade.
Wow.
That was in the form of the Air Force One shoe. And I was on the float.
Wow.
When it was going down. So that it was big. It was big. And then, so like I said, Big Pun had it on his video, and it was crazy. We laid it out. And so that became us a regular annual.
Because that was the
thing.
first cultural product collaboration.
I would say so, unless somebody can tell me differently. I think that was the first culture. Then after that, I did the West Indies Air Force One for the Labor Day, jump off. So I think that predates any kind of cultural collaboration, I guess.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you, man. It's a long time ago, but it's still fun to talk about.
So it's not just about the Air Force One. You also you're an extreme silent giant, because you also work with Reebok.
I have, yes.
And you were working with Jay,
50, Pharrell,
and you were behind the S. Carter and G Unit. So to give you context, so when I started, they had already did like the first evolution of the S. Carter. Okay.
So that predates me, and said that was the Gucci shoe that they did.
Mm-hmm.
That was the original Gucci that came out, and then I came on board. It was involved in every shoe kind of after that one. So we did an S. Carter for what's my man that played for the Knicks, man? He was real Crawford.
Jamal Crawford.
Yeah. And then we did some other iterations, but yes, was working on that, and then
because you've done work for Converse.
Yep.
Which was owned by Nike.
Which was, but I was at Commerce before Nike owned them. So when I was there, we got acquired. So I was part of the team that got Converse nice and juicy for Nike to come by.
And so then you went to Under Armour. I'm very intrigued by like your time at Under Armour because this is where you came into Nike as the Air Force One was hot. Mm-hmm. You're coming into a brand with a brand new identity.
Yes.
Looking to like make a imprint.
Yes.
And compete with the giants in the sneaker industry.
Yes.
And so like, what was a part of the strategy of getting Under Armour like in the right direction? Because you're obviously starting with a brand new company with no reputation in the basketball market. At that point, they were doing like the dry fit. I knew Under Armour at that time as dry fit clothing.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's because dry fit is actually Nike, but it's what was it? Just the tight stuff.
Right, the tight stuff. Yeah. I just knew it as like the stuff football players wear.
Yeah, exactly. The tight stuff, exactly. Yeah, no, it was. Under Armour was interesting because in a lot of ways, when I got there, it really did remind me of Nike in terms of like the energy, the aggression, kind of that attitude, right? I mean, because Nike wasn't always as big as it was. It was always like a renegade, element to it, and it's lost it, now because it's so big. But Under Armour at that point in time really kind of spoke in that kind of language, and that was kind of attractive. So for me, there was an energy, and it's a real performance company. So that's half the battle, right? There's some authentic performance aspects that people kind of believe in, and that mainly came from the apparel side of things. And then the footwear was a little bit more going to be a challenge, right? And again, I was global brand director for basketball on the marketing side, so that was my job. And so, we had a strategy in place that was at multiple levels. So we had Brandon Jennings as a pro athlete and validating.
He was the first athlete.
He was the first one.
Now, was he there when you signed on, or
no? Brandon was there already.
Okay.
Before I got there, so
okay.
Brandon was there, and then soon afterwards, they had Grievous Vasquez. Mm-hmm. So Grievous, who's a Maryland alumni, but then after that, like as soon as I think Kemba Walker started, and then I came on board. And then we had Derek Williams. So when I was there, it was like Derek Williams, Brandon Jennings, Kemba Walker, and Grievous Vasquez. So, I mean, love all those guys. Great NBA players, but then they're not guys that are moving the needle, right? They're not moving. But what they did do is they validated the fact that
we're here,
and you can play in these shoes at the highest level.
Right.
That's square one. And we're doing a bare minimum. So that's like, okay. And then we had our college, programs weren't that great because we had football colleges that happened to play basketball.
Yeah.
Because we were more of a football. So the programs we had weren't that great, but they were at least teams. They were playing on TV and they were probably getting blown out. But boom. But where we did a really good job was at the grassroots level. That's where the rubber meets the road. Like we really, at that time, they spent money and kind of connecting with the future of basketball with these AAU programs. And if you know anything about AAU, it's an ugly business.
Yep.
Adidas is in it, Nike's in it.
Who was Sonny
Vaccaro.
Sonny Vaccaro.
And he wrote the blueprint. So that was a really important piece that kind of helped kind of keep us on track, keep us in the mix, keep us in the conversation, I would say. But the game changer came in 2013, and that's when we signed Steph Curry.
And how did that really come about? Also, too, Steph at this time isn't stuff that we know of today. Mm-mm. So you were kind of getting him really kind of early on. Like the buzz hadn't already.
It was starting though.
Right.
It was right. It was the perfect timing.
They kind of pulled a Jordan.
Yeah.
They kind of pulled a Jordan with Steph.
Yes.
Where Jordan was not in the NBA yet. he wasn't number one in the league. He wasn't the most coveted college player.
Right.
Like Nike kind of hopped on Jordan
Totally.
early, invested in it. It just completely worked out.
Totally.
And the same kind of happened with Steph, where Steph's game evolved.
It totally did. But like right before the year we actually signed him, Steph he got snubbed by the for All-Star Weekend because he was having a pretty dope season that year, but for whatever reason he didn't make the All-Star game, but that's changed ever since. Since that time he's gone on to make the All-Star game. But like he was right at the cusp, and at the time, you know, Nike, that's the thing about it. They have such a large roster of athletes. They can't market everybody. And, you know, when you have LeBron, you have KD, you have at the time, Kobe was still the big guy. And then they had already identified Kyrie Irving to be like next in line. So there was no space for Steph. So when the music stopped, there was no chair for Steph.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, but that's what a lot of players do. I mean, you think about, you know, Paul George is a really good player. Like a lot of these guys, if they were on other brands, like they would be
the feature,
the guy
right.
on the brand. But you know,
because who was it? You or another person in the company that eyed Steph and was like, "Yo, we should."
It was more of a collective thing.
Okay,
you know what I mean. So we had a person that's handling sports marketing. I'm on the brand marketing side. We have a product marketing person. So we always every year at the draft, we're trying to we need to figure out to get somebody so we can be, relevant. You know what I mean? And so at the time we were looking within the draft, but then you got to kind of wait for a guy to kind of pop off. You got to let it incubate. That's why we picked Kemba Walker. He was great. You know what I mean? But Kemba didn't start making. He didn't make an All-Star game until this past year.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we knew that there was something there. But it's within basketball, you gotta jump on it quick. So looking at existing guys, so Paul George was on that list, Steph Curry was on that list. So we all kind of had like a chalkboard. We had Blake Griffin. He was on that list. We had Blake come in. We did a presentation for him. So we had a lot of guys on the list. And, Blake fell through for whatever reason. And, Steph, it was just kind of worked out because I think Nike kind of handed to us because I don't know if you know the story, but when Nike went to go present to Steph, they had KD's image in the deck, so it had the wrong deck. They didn't even have his name on there. They kept calling him Steven, right? And he doesn't like to be called Steven. He's Stephen. You know what I mean? And so there was just a lot of little knick-knack things that. I think that was, a little bit of Nike's arrogance, obviously. And so, he was open. He was very open at this point, like, hey, listen, what do you guys got? And so, I think the fact that he got equity in the company, that was very different. It's very unorthodox. Groundbreaking, yes,
yeah.
Very unorthodox there because he couldn't really write the same kind of check that Nike could write, but the value of Under Armour.
And he also wasn't what we know of him today.
Correct.
So it was even more of a risk because you're giving this athlete who's definitely a proven talent.
Yeah,
no question, but not. It's like Justin Timberlake versus when he went solo.
Exactly.
Like he was hot,
but he's crazy.
Or
now.
Michael. Once Michael dropped Tito,
it
just exploded.
He was bananas.
I mean, you can't predict that.
No.
No.
We got very lucky, very great kid. Just the salt of the earth. I mean, that's one guy I miss working with there. He was just a pleasure, and just everything about him just made sense. And for him being an underdog, at least at that time, it just all just married up perfectly, man.
This guy took the words out of my mouth as far as he really represented. We're kind of, I look at what Jordan did for Nike.
Yeah.
He kind of became the prototype of what a Nike athlete is.
Yes.
Where a Nike athlete is almost like Goliath-like.
Yeah.
They're very, muscular. And when I think of a Nike athlete, I think of Bo Jackson.
Yes.
Extremely built,
rock solid.
And Steph really kind of represented to me, like in the Under Armour brand, of like the underdog, like spirit. Because at the time, Under Armour was the underdog competing against Adidas and Nike.
Totally. He was David.
Yeah, he was David. He was David.
He was David, man. And he really went there and slashed him up. And it was instant. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, that's a good example of where you can say that, yes, this person directly had an impact on the business. Like, there's no kind of like guessing on that, like, because our basketball shoes became immediately relevant as soon as he started. And the thing about it, because he related to young people, kids wanted to be him, and parents loved him.
Yep.
Right? So he had the perfect combination of this, like,
and the average kid is not Goliath. The average kid is David.
Is David, exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that's working like beautifully. And
what went into the strategy of with Steph? Like, was there like a market strategy that you had of like, okay, this is how we're going to promote this guy? Like, what was your?
Yeah, I mean, everything I think we kind of just said in terms of like, we're like, okay, who are we, and what characteristics in Steph and kind of align with that. So how do we tell that story, in a humbling kind of way without it being like in your face? And so the strategy with Steph was always to kind of show him like putting in work, right? The doing the stuff behind the scenes that allow him to be phenomenal in front of the scenes, in front of the camera, right? And so just that uncanny like work ethic, and everything we did around him just kind of showed, that essence and that grit. And so that's kind of was like, we're the common man, right? Like, so as long as you work hard, you got to have some talent. Not everybody's going to be as great, but as long as you put the work in, you're going to get somewhere. And so I think that was kind of the message that, like you said, you don't have to be gargantuan and physically gifted, because not everybody's that, right? You're not born that way. But, if you're just a regular size and you're working hard. So that was kind of like the mentality. So a lot of the print work that we did, a lot of the, YouTube like videos that we would shoot around them, because we didn't have a big budget. We weren't doing, big, time commercials, except for his first shoe when we actually launched the one with Jamie Foxx. Curry One. Yeah. That's the first shoe that I launched, and that was like the best-selling shoe.
Wow.
At Under Armour at the time. It was hotcakes, off the meter, and that's when I dropped the mic. So you, I don't want to throw any numbers out there, but I'm gonna throw some numbers out there. Mike Parker is responsible for taking the company in basketball from $10 million to $100 million in revenue. Yes, that's true. In basketball, across the board. Footwear, apparel, and accessories, yes. And that was in a 4-year period.
Yeah, I'm going to hire you to run my life. $10 or $10 mil.
Hey, man, all day. I'm right here for you.
Hey, my man. So on this note, what has gotten you, before we close out, what has gotten you to this point?
Passion. I hate to use the cliche hard work, but hard work is a part of it. But I would even say like relationships, right? All those things are very important, because who you meet on your journey is important, because no one does it alone. And when you have good relationships and you couple that, with your passion, I think opportunities, come along. And I think for me, I've just been real with myself about the things that I like and what I'm interested in. And I've just been fortunate to kind of stick in that world. So whether it's basketball or hip hop culture or music or lifestyle, like, I guess it just follows me, or I follow it.
Yeah.
But one way or the other, we're connected. And so I think those are the things that kind of get me to where I am right now.
Hey, there we go. I think it's worked. I think it's worked, my man.
Listen, I'm going to keep doing it until it doesn't work.
Hey,
so
can't stop, won't stop.
Hey, there it is. P.
Bad boy,
Diddy.
baby.
There it is.
All right, Mike Parker, man, thank you so much
Thank you.
It is such a pleasure to like meet you and have you on the show.
No, this is dope. This is fun, man.
Extraordinary story. like honestly, like extraordinary story.
Man, I appreciate
a true silent giant. You're the man.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Thank you so much to the silent giants behind this episode of the Silent Giants podcast. This episode has been mixed by Mark Byrd of MBM Studios, located in Astoria, Queens, NYC's #1 recording studio for music, podcasting, and other audio recordings. Be sure to follow them on Instagram at MBM Studios NYC. Also, the music for this episode has been brought to you by Obliv. Be sure to follow him as well on Instagram. I'm your host, Corey Cambridge, signing off till next time.